Hey everyone, thanks for joining us here on Reluctant Preppers. Asking for your help tonight because even though we have record numbers of subscribers here on Reluctant Preppers trying to spread the word about preparedness and self-reliance and awareness, we've been receiving reduced revenue from our YouTube videos being marked as advertiser unfriendly and having to curtail the content and the descriptions and the topics and the guests that we can introduce. So with your help, we can overcome that and break free of that restriction. If you go to patreon.com/reluctantpreppers, you can make any amount of small or modest or larger monthly donation to help support our mission. We've established goals there to help bring you even more content with the different levels that we can achieve together. Thanks, folks. Check it out, patreon.com/reluctantpreppers. And now, on to our main event.
As a responsible person with growing concerns for your privacy and personal liberty, you want to know where we're headed and what you can do about it. We ask the experts what you need to do to take prudent and responsible action to safeguard your family's wealth and well-being, and what basic first steps will help you to be aware and prepared. ReluctantPreppers.com.
Welcome back, Reluctant Preppers. We're honored to have a returning guest tonight, Brad Harris. He is an urban and backwoods bushcraft trainer, founder and host of Full Spectrum Survival. He's been with us several times here on Reluctant Preppers to talk about everything from urban exit strategies to surviving cooking in the backwoods, how to start a fire when it's wet, who do you trust. And he's here with us again on Reluctant Preppers to talk to us about a number of geopolitical risk spots and what is his proprietary news algorithm that searches the world for stories and news feeds and individual commentaries from ordinary people like you and me is telling us about the signs of the times. Brad, thank you for joining us here again, Reluctant Preppers.
Thank you, Dunnigan, and thank you everyone for having me here.
You are originally introduced yourself not only as a survivalist and a person who teaches about skills and that sort of thing, but also a person who is a programmer and an analyst of information feeds. We've had some recent talks from future-looking data analysts and unstructured data experts talking about how you can mine and do analytics on the social media and other sources of unstructured information that are available and flowing around the globe. Can you first talk to us about what it is you do to make sense and to focus in on what the main themes are in the news that you analyze, and then what specific stories are emerging right now as clear and present information that people who are aware need to be aware of for their survival and the safety of their family?
Absolutely. So I program in the Python programming language. It's a higher level language, and what I did is write an algorithm that goes out and searches over 10 different languages, society languages across the world, and feeds that information into me on a hierarchy of for me to look over and see what exactly is trending that given 24-hour period. Plus, I can put, like you said, some future analysis on it and see, giving the curve of the trends, what we're looking at in the near future. To give you an example, through the Ebola outbreak, not this most recent one, but the one in years past, through Egyptian unrest, through Iranian issues that we have had, we were able to watch the curve weeks before the mainstream media picked it up, and we reported those things to the Full Spectrum Survival channel. Now, what we're watching right now is something that I personally feel is very dangerous because it is close to home for everybody in North America. We are seeing calls not just on certain politically grounded websites, not just of certain people, but we're seeing the calls of everyday people using their Twitter feeds, using Facebook, using just forums where they're calling for the active impeachment of Donald Trump. Now, the impeachment of the United States isn't something that we can take lightly. The impeachment of a president isn't something that we can take lightly because it is given the sentiment and the general unease of malcontent that we're seeing across the U.S. right now. This won't be just a normal political impeachment as they continue this call. This will be calls for unrest, calls for the unraveling of the society that we have built for so many years. And it really does strike a dangerous tone in all that we're seeing. Look at recent celebrity hoaxes and celebrity mass media campaigns where they're holding up severed heads of the U.S. president, where we have these movers and shifters in the society all the way up to Soros, where they are working every single day and their corporations are working to call for societal unrest. We're also seeing outside sources that are in direct opposition to the United States, like China and Russia, and they are actively working to destabilize the average citizen of the U.S. by fanning these flames of social discontent. Not much different than the United States and other countries stepped into the Egyptian unrest, stepped into the Syrian civil war, and have fanned those flames of malcontent towards those governments. Now we're seeing it happen from other governments into the United States. And what we'll see in the near future is continued anger, maybe even as soon as this summer.
A quick question for you.
Sure.
For ordinary people, such as myself or maybe a lot of our listeners, would have a very hard time discriminating and discerning when they see different stories on news. Everybody's pointing the other way and saying fake news is coming from that side. No, fake news is coming from that side. But you've got some way of saying that you can tell by the sources of where these are coming from, whether they're coming from outside sources or whether they're coming from grassroots individuals within the country. How can an ordinary person have even a hope of telling what the actual source is of these various you say calls for unrest?
Well, what I would say is that anyone looking at any type of media needs to take it with a grain of salt and try to build their own database, try to build their own discernment based off of other articles or other things that they're seeing from that individual. Like if you came over to, as an example, if anyone listening to Reluctant Preppers, if they saw you leaning a certain way that pushed a certain agenda, they would let everyone know. Your viewers would, they in the comments, they would say, hey, you're really pushing this agenda. But you stay very grounded, Dunnigan, and I believe that the listeners are very grounded as well. So when you see someone call out another organization as fake news, or when you see these larger fights between the United States and Russia on who hacks who and where does this come from, or is it North Korea, and all these different things, try to, in your mind, build your own trend. Say, okay, what have I seen from this organization recently? What have I seen happen from this outlet? And if you see them leaning one way or the other, know that it is with an agenda at hand, that they are trying to push one side of the agenda or another. And you look at today, where for so long, how long have we heard the calls that Russia's hack determined the outcome of the outcome of the election? We've heard this over and over again. And could it happen? Absolutely. The U.S. has had their hand in every election, for as long as I can remember, and so has Russia, and so has everyone else. This isn't a new game, but they've pushed it for so hard that, and then today, Putin came out and he says, we didn't do it on a state level, but it could have been patriotic hackers that did it. So you've got to see that there is a certain level of disinformation, and there's also a certain level of credibility to almost everything that is going on right now. You've got people on one side that are saying the Trump administration has to come down because they'll take away the rights of everyone, which we know is a falsity. But then you look at the other side of what's going on, and you see that they're making it, states across the United States are making it illegal to stand up and protest. And so you sort of start to see a building cacophony of danger in the future continuity of the society as we know it.
You mentioned in passing there Germany, China, Russia, and others. You mentioned in our discussions before the interview about new communications coming out of Germany about a power shift or a directional pivot away from the U.S. and their hegemony on finances and political power globally. Can you talk to us more about what you're hearing coming out of Germany? Yeah,
so around 72 hours ago on the World News Update, we discussed the growing potential for powerful countries and powerful militaries to shift away from the United States economically and militarily because of the direction that the U.S. was taking, because of a general jumping ship that we're starting to see. And just today, Germany, sitting with China, said that they must expand their partnership in these, quote, times of global uncertainty. As relations with the U.S. worsen, the German chancellor called for closer cooperation militarily and economically with China. Merkel and China's leadership held 2 days worth of bilateral talks, talking just about that. about how they can grow together away from the United States. Now, that's a real danger for the U.S. It's a danger for the USD and for the people of the United States because we have sat on top of the mountain for so long. And now the rising power of China and Russia and those that have an anti-Western viewpoint are beginning to equal the military might and the economic might of the USD.
I'm recalling a quote from Warren Buffett, the Oracle of Omaha, from about 5 years ago, or maybe it was more like 10 years ago. He was saying, when people were asking him about why he was investing in China, and the quote went something like, the 19th century belonged to the British Empire, the 20th century belonged to the United States Empire, and the 21st century belongs to China. Invest accordingly. And it certainly seemed to be his indication at a very basic level that there will be a mega trend of a power shift away from the U.S. and to China this century. Yeah,
you're absolutely right. And something that everyone can see is just look at the Hollywood takeover that China has implemented. China is now in over 40% of all Hollywood new movies, of everything that goes out, of everything that is celebrated by the American people. China has a hand in it, and not just a hand, but a directing hand in it. And so you see things taking place just on that very small, very specific economic level that are starting to move away from the United States. And you see militarily with China and India's cooperation, you see with China and Russia, the takeover of the South China Sea and the controlling of that region, which is very dependent. That the South China Sea holds so much power because it controls over 70% of all seafaring goods. So without the ability to move freely around that region, over 70% of those goods will stop. They'll be at a standstill. And then the countries that are in opposition to China will be forced to either make them themselves or handle themselves accordingly. And what we see is as the United States loses power, and you brought up a great point there, the empire of the United States. Every empire falls. And as the USD, as the United States loses power militarily and economically, another power is rising. And we see that to be China and Russia. And I don't want that to happen personally. I live in the United States. And I know what will happen as that continues, that this, like we talked about first, the flaming of outside sources to destabilize the United States will only get worse until we do have social unrest, something that could look similar to what we saw in Syria and what we see today.
Also, you mentioned Russia, and we've seen articles recently about Putin being kind of a caller for chaos or a force for chaos, and any time that he can cause disruption and considers that to be able to destabilize the situation, especially if the situation is not currently in Russia's hands, works towards his strategic ends. Can you talk a little bit more about what you're hearing about Russia's plans?
Well, they definitely surround the strategic location of ICBMs and defense capabilities. Russia today just said that they will not sit idly by while the U.S. deploys global anti-missile defense systems or pro-destruction systems. Putin said that Russia will not sit idly by and see the latest developments of U.S. anti-missile systems in South Korea and looks at them as a challenge. And they will not leave that challenge without a response, without a reply, without a response. Explaining Russia's own buildup in that region, they said, quote, "This issue is a major concern for us, and we have been constantly voicing it for decades. This disrupts the strategic balance of the world." So we do see a shift here. We see, whereas in decades past, everyone sat idly by to one degree or another, and you either got in line behind the United States military or you stood out in front. And we've seen what happened in decades past when you stood out in front. But now things are changing, and there is a shift of balance. And what we'll see in the future of our world is very concerning, because we do have the very real potential of a world war.
And you also mentioned Venezuela in passing. Can you talk to us about what developments your newsfeed algorithms are unearthing there?
Well, for anyone listening or watching who has seen a zombie flick, who has seen a zombie movie, and where they show a wall of the missing, and there's pictures and goods and descriptions and things like that. There are walls of the missing in Venezuela today. And you can go online and you can find the images of the walls of the missing. And these are the missing because the Venezuelan military is going out and doing what they have either been told to do or what they feel is right for the continuity of the Venezuelan government. And that's making the problems disappear. Now, we all know that that isn't happening on a grand scale because there are still tens of thousands of people in the streets. Now, I want to read a quick statement from a report by a Venezuelan that was writing to the aware community. He said, "For the past 2 months, Venezuelans like myself have taken to the streets to exercise our constitutional right to peacefully protest against the most repressive regime in our nation's history." I want to take that apart for a second because they want to exercise their constitutional right to peacefully protest. But just a few minutes ago, we discussed how the United States is making it illegal to protest without the allowance of the government, even though, like in Venezuela, it is our constitutional right to do that. He goes on to say, while the unconstitutional and failed attempt by the Supreme Court to dissolve the Venezuelan National Assembly sparked these protests, we have sustained them for so long because we know we are in the fight of our lives. We protest amidst an immense humanitarian crisis. Our failing economy has led to a scarcity of food and medicine, which has in turn led to an increase in the prevalence of malnutrition and other preventable diseases. If I could say to everyone listening, everyone watching, that what is going on in Venezuela is the exact thing that you need to prepare for on a personal level, I would want everyone to hear that with an open heart and an open mind, that you can look at what is happening in Venezuela down to the everyday events, from the protests to the government crackdowns to the food scarcity to the inability to go to the doctor, all of these things, and take those into a personal account and prepare for each one of those things. I need to protect my family from. Go ahead.
No, I was going
to say I need to prepare to protect my family.
Correct. And I was going to ask you the next topic, just to lead us right on into that. You and your wife at Full Spectrum Survival have been showing people step by step how to go off the grid. And it may in fact be that we don't have a choice. The grid may go away if there is some kind of major societal unrest, whether it's fomented from without or whether it's collapsed from within. And as we look to Venezuela as how people are struggling with just desperate challenges and stresses trying to survive, what are some of the steps that you have started teaching people about how to go off the grid?
One of the first things that I give to everybody is the knowledge that you can only survive 3 days without water. And once you get into your third day, you're going to have a very hard time having the energy and the wherewithal to find water. To put it into perspective, in the United States of America, almost everybody is walking around dehydrated, because at the point that you reach thirst, as the point that you feel thirsty, you're already 5% dehydrated. At 15%, you're dead. So you only have that small window to go from 5% to 15% from day 1 to day 3 before you go from being absolutely normal to not being able to function. And so when you look at water scarcity, especially in rural regions, you have to kind of think outside of the box and think, what am I going to do to be able to get water, to keep it, to make it safe to drink, and to do all of these things. And unfortunately, everybody has to kind of take into account their own location. Somebody in an apartment is going to have a vastly different experience than somebody in a rural area with a well. But what Kelly and I did, what my wife and I did, is we voted with our feet, and we decided to get out of the city. And so we purchased a small piece of land, which was very inexpensive, and I mean very inexpensive, here in the Alabama mountains, and we are building that as a completely off-grid cabin, never having a spot of power touch it, having the hand pump already on the well as we drill it.
Right.
And we are doing that because we feel that the future holds so much uncertainty that we have to do that as our family to prepare ourselves. And I want everybody listening to think about they will prepare themselves. Do you have a go bag or a get home bag? If you're on medication, which so many people are, do you have some storage of that? If not, you need to be proactive and take action and call your doctor and say, I need an extra month's worth of this, and try to step ahead of the game. But at the same time, like if you're on high blood pressure medication, you need to make lifestyle changes and look for natural alternatives because they do exist. And just to give everyone a small bit of example, I had type 1 hypertension, but through lifestyle changes, and I mean extreme lifestyle changes, I was able to drop down over 90 pounds, change my dietary intake, drink only water, and I'll admit coffee, and went from hypertension, high blood pressure, to nothing. My blood pressure is fine. The last time I took it, I think it was like 150 over 70. Okay. It was fine for my body type and myself and my age group. So make proactive changes. And just touching real quick on another subject that came up here at the homestead recently. I'm right next to another YouTuber, and he has bees. He has an apiary. He has never in his life had an allergic reaction to anything and has gotten stung dozens of times. But just by chance, and through his body changing over time, he got stung the other week and was very near anaphylactic shock. For anyone who doesn't know what anaphylactic shock is, basically your throat closes up, you lose the ability to breathe, your blood pressure bottoms out, and if not medically treated immediately, you will succumb to that reaction. So he was in what's called step 4 of the 5 steps of severity for an allergic reaction, where he had non-local site hives,
right.
All of those different things. And it was just short of mouth swelling, tongue swelling, and throat closing up. So he has to look at that and now make a change, one, knowing that he wasn't prepared. He didn't have an epinephrine pen on hand. Mm-hmm. He didn't have any of those things. So he has to acknowledge that and then move forward and see what he can do about the future to not let that happen again, or decide to give up what was a profitable and fun experience for him in having bees.
Reminds me of what we've been learning about. I know viewers, when I visited your channel, as well as viewers here on our recent podcast entitled What You're Not Being Told About Lyme Disease, certainly have got a bit of an earful about some of the primary infections and co-infections that can be carried not only by the vector of deer ticks, but also ordinary Rocky Mountain ticks and other, even in some cases, people say, fleas, spiders, and mosquitoes as well. So there's an increasing range of increasingly virulent diseases that are showing themselves more and more difficult to treat and having more and more wide-ranging impacts that can be caught in any locale. Originally it was spreading from the East Coast towards the West, and it's also flaring up on the West Coast going towards the East, and it's some places in between. And people have talked about that the birds can carry some of these insects, so really it'll be expected to continue to spread. But the most distressing part of it is the seriousness and difficulty to treat seems to be rapidly increasing. So some of those, you mentioned allergic reactions and how the body can change. There's also, as a lot of people know, different strains of bees that have been introduced coming up either from Central America and Mexico on up, Africanized queens and that sort of thing, killer bees. So the sting might have been not from the same exact variety of honeybees that your friend had been exposed to in the past, or it may have been a change from without, not necessarily only from within. So some of the threats that we're up against are in fact changing around us.
Yeah, the environment is definitely your largest enemy in a survival situation. The environment is raw, and as far as animals go, we as humans are pretty we're pretty mild, and so we're born without a thick fur. We're born without the fat necessary to see us through if we're abandoned by our parents, and we are always trying to catch up to that. So you have to sort of tap into that olden times, that pioneer time thinking, where every moment of every day is about your survival. And unfortunately, that's the same thing that's going to drive potential opposition, potential enemies during social unrest, because they quickly fall back into that I have to survive. I have to feed my baby. I have to protect my family. And it becomes an us versus them almost immediately. And we see that in every social collapse. And so you need to prepare for that event as well. What are you going to do when your neighbors who know you have food stores, or your neighbors who have seen you with goods, decide that they want to come take them for themselves, sometimes maliciously? And how will you react to that? And one of the things that we try to tell everyone is create a tiered plan. So your tiered plan should be based upon the environment around you, whether that's a dangerous environment, whether it's the raw environment of the earth, and use that plan to fall down those bullet points, fall down that list, and move forward appropriately so that you're not bugging out or getting out of the city if you don't have to, or getting out of your home to another retreat location. You're not bugging out if you don't have to. And in the same way, if you're in a remote location, you're not treating it as though there's a mob outside of your house. And so if somebody from down the street comes over to use a barter system or just talk about getting some help, you're not treating them hostilely before you need to.
Right. It's really drawing on some skills that most people in what we call civilized society have not had to draw on. So it's really thinking outside of our usual comfort zone. And you've talked in the past about mental rehearsals and going through playing what-if scenarios with your family and closest friends to really talk through those things, because there won't be time to make clear-headed decisions in the heat of a unexpected situation. So it really helps to have rehearsed those scenarios in your mind ahead of time.
That's right.
Can you talk to us a little bit before we wrap about your new compendium of news feeds and of preparedness websites, so people can make a one-stop shop each day to see in one stop on your website what all are the latest stories on a number of other survival and preparedness websites?
Okay, so first let me say that we have a Patreon campaign, and on that campaign, and it's successful. I'm not asking anyone to go there or anything, but we have people who come there for primarily physical survival cards that we give to our patrons. As you guys know, here at Reluctant Preppers, YouTube and large corporations and the globalist elite, they have started to fight against anything that goes against the grain of the mainstream media. And so they have taken away, they've demonetized and restricted, and in cases of my channel, even removed videos because they claim them to not be viewer or advertiser friendly. And so we started the Patreon campaign, and what we wanted to do is reach a certain goal and really give back to everybody there. So we started giving back to them in the form of waterproof, high-resolution survival cards. Kelly and I go out, we take the images, we craft the survival tips that we put on the back, laminate it, and send it out so that people actually get something physical in their hand. So if the grid goes down, they will have access to their survival cards that they can keep in their backpack. And we've also had people use them as kind of a gateway and give a picture to somebody and say, hey, what do you think about this? And they kind of use that to open up a line of communication. But we asked the people there on Patreon what they want. And they said they wanted a one-stop shop so that they didn't have to spend hours and hours researching to find that one gem of a preparedness article. And so what I did is I wrote a program that goes out and it searches over 30 different websites, searches all the social media feeds, and looks for any written articles that pertain to survival and preparedness. It checks that against the dictionary that I already have a previous link so that there's no double posting, and then it feeds them to me, and I create a compendium of those links, including a top 5 where I say, okay, these top 5 are the ones you should read today, and then the rest are listed below, and we post that every day to everyone on Patreon, even at the $1 level.
And so anybody who's one of your Patreon donors gets access to the Survival and Preparedness Compendium?
Yeah, that's right. Anyone, even at the $1 level, they get access to the compendium. They get all the digital high-resolution images and prep tips, just not in physical form. The only real difference is at $10, they're going to get something in the mail every month with a newsletter and the survival cards.
All right. Well, Brad, we really appreciate you joining us here again on Reluctant Preppers and always bringing in your latest insights from your continuing analytics of ongoing news feeds and social media posts. And what we'd like to do is, if next time we have you back, talk about some of the latest training that you've provided on both urban and backwoods bushcraft in specific, a couple specific topics to whet people's interest so that they can look up more on your Full Spectrum Survival YouTube channel. And just another reminder for people, Brad also has a daily news roll-up. It's very quick, less than 5 minutes on his, what do you call it? It's your daily...
The World News Update.
World News Update on Full Spectrum Survival YouTube channel. So check that out, folks. I think you'll find it engaging. And Brad Harris, founder and host of Full Spectrum Survival, just thanks again for joining us here on Reluctant Preppers.
Thank you so much, Don. Again, thank you, everyone, for having me. And I wanted to bring up that you're almost halfway to your goal on Patreon, too, which is going to allow you to step up even past the weekly interviews. I think that's great. So if anyone hasn't pulled that trigger yet, make sure you go do it. I know as a patron, you're going to get so much more. And being able to actually physically give back is an important thing for me as well. And if anyone wants to watch our off-grid adventure, Kelly and I have Off-Grid with Brad and Kelly on YouTube. Just search that term, and you're going to see everything from making your own off-grid shower to how we're building our tiny off-grid cabin. So thank you guys for having me here.
Great, Brad. Thank you. Take care.